the Environment and Regeneration Committee, and I will ask Karen to take the notice and summons the meeting and members' attendance and apologies, please.
Thank you, Chair. To all members of Environment and Regeneration Committee, you're hereby summoned to attend the monthly meeting of Environment and Regeneration Committee, which will be a hybrid meeting conducted remotely via WebEx and physically in the Council Chamber, Strabane, on Wednesday, the 11th of February at 4 p.m. And I'll take the roll call. Alderman Derek Cosley.
Aye.
Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
Online, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Julie Middleton.
Here, Karen, online.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paul Boggs. Councillor John Boyle. Online. Councillor Gary Donnelly.
Fanshawe.
Thank you.
Apologies, Karen, I couldn't get my mic on there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alex Duffy. It's online. Yeah. Councillor Rory Farrell.
Online.
Thank you. Councillor Sean Fleming.
And Shaw.
Thank you. Councillor Emma McGinley.
And Shocker.
Councillor Elizabeth McGowan. Apologies. Okay, thank you. Councillor Pat Murphy. Councillor Declan Norris.
Here, online.
Thank you. And Councillor Martin Riley.
Online, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks, members. Just for the broadcasting statement then, members, and for the benefits of our guests, obviously you know that there are people online who have answered us online now, so I would like to remind everyone present at this meeting in the chamber or in attendance remotely that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. This broadcast may be terminated or suspended in accordance with our protocol. Due to your attendance at this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and to the use and storage of those images for broadcasting or training purposes and for the purpose of keeping historical records and making those records available to the public. Members and approved speakers are reminded to only have their mics and cameras on while speaking at the meeting and to use the chat facility to highlight a request to speak. A copy of the Council Privacy Notice may be found on the Council website www.derrystrabane.com. Moving on, members, item number 4 is declarations of member interest, either to declare them now or as we move through the meeting. Content enough? Okay then, members, moving on to item number 5 is a deputation to receive representatives from the Beekeepers Association, and I want to give a very warm welcome to the Strabane Chamber to Brian Grimmick, Tony Doherty and Valentine Hodges, and I hope I've pronounced all those correctly. So we will just give our guests a couple of minutes to get seated and then we will make a start.
You go to
I've done the whole that's
no, just
good enough.
Okay, happy enough? You're very welcome, as I say. So if you want to go on ahead, I know you have sent through a presentation already, which members have had time to have a look at. So if you want to go on ahead with your presentation, then we'll take members' questions after that. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, Paul, thank you very much. Tony Doherty, I'm the chairperson of the Derry District Beekeepers Association, and we're here to provide the committee with a sort of general background of the work of the association, but also to focus your attention on the Asian hornet, which is a newcomer to these shores, unfortunately. And Brian will address that in more substantive detail. The committee itself is a collective of people who are interested in nature, bees specifically. Quite a few of them are honey producers, either for their own family or for our people. The association has been going now for, I think, about 10 or 11 years. It took over from a previous iteration of it. And we own and maintain an apiary in Derry, just behind Christchurch there on Francis Street. And there's quite a few hives. And that beekeeping has grown in popular interest over the last 10 years or so. And there are many hives scattered right around the city and Strabane and country areas. And the committee acts as a as a locus for all those who are interested in beekeeping, who want to set up a hive, or who just want to sort of go along because they're interested, but not necessarily to set up themselves. We have a partnership with the Northwest Regional College in relation to a new course which had its first year last year, and had a sign up of over 30 individuals. So it was a highly successful course, and we recruited quite a number of people into the association, and a number of new beekeepers as well, including myself, I have to add, which I'm very proud to say. And that we're currently, I think we've now stopped recruitment for the second year of the course, due to it being oversubscribed. So as I say, we're a collective. We're very interested in nature, very interested in the role of bees and maintaining the globe, I suppose, from a healthy, from a health point of view. And we do have a specific concern, as I said, with regard to the introduction of the Asian hornet to our shores, which is an invasive species which has caused untold damage in many countries in Northern Europe in recent times. And we're here to talk to you about what that means, not just for bees, but for our pollinators, and also what we can do about it collectively, including the council. So I'm happy now to hand over to Brian, and maybe Valentine will come in as well, and then we'll hopefully develop a conversation in terms of the art of the possible. So thank you.
Right. Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the Environmental and Regeneration Committee, first of all, as Vice Chair of the Ulster Beekeepers Association in Northern Ireland, I'm very grateful for your invitation to give evidence to this committee on the serious threat facing beekeeping in Northern Ireland arising from Asian hornet. Now, I did produce a presentation, which I think all your members will have, and that has quite a lot of information in it. I'm not proposing to read any of the slides out, but I'm going to talk around them. And I would say that I'm also here with the chair of the Ulster Beekeepers, Valentine Hodges, and both of us spent an interesting week last summer in Jersey dealing directly with Asian hornets. So we've seen them actually in situ where they have become well established. And in Jersey, for example, I think this year they killed 600 nests. And it just shows how it can actually have a real impact. And if you don't act quickly to actually address the threat, it can very quickly grow out of all proportions and become impossible to fix. I think the committee's interest in beekeeping has probably been triggered somewhat by the recent appearance of Asian hornets in Dundonald, which was a bit of a surprise to us insofar as, we saw it coming. We hoped it wouldn't come for some time. And what the Ulster Beekeepers Association has been doing over the last 2 years is writing to government ministers, really raising the need to actually be prepared and to act in a timely and decisive manner should an Asian hornet appear. I think in addition to that, we have been involved in the establishment of an all-Ireland group, initially an ad hoc group focusing specifically on Asian hornets. It's now an all-Ireland beekeeping action group. So it's still focusing on Asian hornets, but in fact, it will probably pick up some other threats which are looming on the horizon. But for today, really, this presentation is about Asian hornets. We go to the next slide. It's actually a Latin name, which I'm sure you will be very interested in. Moving on one, there are a couple of the, moving on to the next slide. Doesn't seem to want to load. There are a couple of the offending Asian hornets. They are, on the face of it, they look quite inoffensive creatures. And when they're feeding, we were surprised in Jersey how relatively inoffensive they were. However, we're very conscious that every year a number of people are killed by them, usually where they stumbled across a nest in undergrowth or brambles. So, it actually has a health risk amongst others. It's first appeared in Europe, I think, some 12 or more years ago. And from the genetics, it appears to have arrived as a single queen arriving in France. Now, that's a single queen, and the French government at the time was rather asleep at the wheel. It took no immediate action to eradicate the threat. It went for a number of years, thus ignoring it. Asian hornets are now well established across France, Spain, Portugal. We were hearing at a webinar earlier today that they are now just arrived in the Azores. They're beginning to appear in North Africa, and we know they're in parts of northern Italy. And the genetics suggest that all of those have come from a single queen that came in, probably in a container or a lorry from the Far East. Actions by those countries, when they did wake up, essentially have been unable to reverse the flow. These hornets predate on honeybees and other native pollinators. And in effect, you know, they will have a very direct effect on beekeepers and production of honey, but also actually it'll affect farmers, both in agriculture and horticulture, because the Asian hornets actually predate on a wide range of pollinators. In essence, we rely, I think about 40% of agriculture in the world relies on insect pollination. And any predator, apex predator, such as Asian hornet, which can, some cases, decimate the pollinator population, will have a real and potentially lasting impact on rural affairs in Northern Ireland. That's the bad news. Moving on to the next slide, I'll just say, essentially, the Asian hornets, we also have seen from their progression in Europe, they're quite adaptable. They do actually fit in. And for a long time, people had the view that they wouldn't ever be a threat to Northern Ireland because we're too cold, too wet, too unattractive. In Northern Europe, they've been found as far north as Norway, and certainly as far south as, say, North Africa. So essentially, they are actually developing their range. And in essence, in fact, if they become established, the experience in Europe is they're almost impossible to actually eradicate. So the very strong evidence is if you have them, you must tackle them decisively at the beginning. I'll say a couple of words about their lifestyle. Go on to the next slide. There's some pictures. The key picture is probably the bottom one, which shows a typical Asian hornet with the yellow or orange stripe, 2/3 way down the abdomen, and the very distinctive yellow legs. Now we know from pictures that there is some variation in types of Asian hornets now beginning to appear. So that may well become, you know, it may become more problematic in the future. But certainly, the Asian hornets we've certainly dealt with so far, and certainly in Jersey, very much fell into that sort of look. The life cycle of the Asian hornet really starts off a bit like wasps. It starts off in they start off with a queen who has hibernated from the year before. Unlike bees, for those of you who know anything about bees don't hibernate. They essentially stay in the nest and they stay in the nest and keep warm and just keep the nest temperature up. And they don't sleep. Whereas actually wasps, hornets, bumblebees, all actually, the nests die off, they leave mated queens that try to survive the winter. And that's the situation there. So come on to the next slide, which is the life cycle. Going to the next life cycle, that really indicates it goes through a cycle of starting off with a single queen in the spring. By the summer, or mid to late summer, it will have a secondary nest. And I'll show you a couple of these in a second, which will have perhaps a number of thousands of Asian hornets. And it may produce literally hundreds of queens. Now, most of those won't actually mate. And of those that do, most will die. But certainly the experience in Jersey was certainly you'd expect a nest which has produced queens to produce at least half a dozen more nests as a product, as a consequence. So it doesn't take much mathematics to know if one nest produces half a dozen the next year, by you get to year 5 or 6, you're into dozens, if not hundreds of nests. Next slide. Now, the primary nest, which in fact is about to come up, is essentially the size of a tennis ball initially. It is the queen literally feeding herself and producing a few workers. Those early workers then start to produce food, and then the nest grows to a large tennis ball. The next slide. However, they then produce a secondary nest, and as you'll see, Valentine holding quite a good example of a secondary nest from Jersey. You'll notice it's somewhat bigger than the tennis ball. And in essence, that will have several thousand Asian hornets in it, and probably could have produced some hundreds of queens. But if you get to that stage and it's releasing those queens, really then you're fighting a rearguard action to try to contain them. Next slide. That picture was a secondary nest, and I think, as you say, they will actually be developed once the queen has established her colony. At that stage, she solely focuses on laying eggs and producing larvae, both male and female, and ultimately queens. And the workers go out and gather food. Next slide. So again, essentially, in fact, around 6,000 Asian hornets will emerge from a secondary nest, possibly between a couple of hundred and 500 new queens. So most of those won't survive, but some will mate, and a number of those will produce secondary nests. Next slide. The experience from Jersey was very much one. Jersey's in a sad position because they've been very active in addressing their Asian hornet. They work with the local community. There's very good awareness in the public. Beekeepers are part of the response, but many of the people who are actively monitoring and tracking Asian hornets are actually people who are garden lovers, or people who actually are interested in the countryside. And they this year actually killed 600 nests. Their dilemma is it's very hard to guarantee you actually manage to destroy all of them. And importantly, being so close to France, even if they were able to destroy all of the nests, they will have more coming in the following year. Now, the next year, some of them will be blown in or fly in, because as I noted earlier, it's only 17 minutes direct fly time if the wind's blowing in the right direction. But against that, aside from that, caravans, lorries, cars, all of those potentially are ways Asian hornets can appear. And in essence, they're fighting a rearguard action. A lot of the practice which is taking place in the UK in dealing with hornets has been developed in Jersey. And they've been very, very active in actually managing the threat. But the reality is, in fact, they're at best fighting to a standstill, because every year there's more nests. Year before last, I think the nests went reduced in numbers, looked like they were winning. Then you get a good summer, and actually the flow is reversed. Next slide. Now, certainly, in fact, some people would say, some people said, they would never come here because it's too cold and wet and miserable, and that's obviously not the case. Others have said, the bees will learn to actually deal with them. The reality is, in the eastern and in the Far East, the bees there, so Apis cerana, has many years of experience, and they've developed some behaviours which actually work effectively. They both mob an Asian hornet when it arrives at a nest and literally actually overheat it and kill it that way. That's very much a learned behavior. They also actually have learned to go into the nest very quickly. So the Asian hornet, which is hovering outside the nest, hasn't got a chance to actually to catch a bee. But the reality is, in Northern Ireland, our bees tend to adopt a panic sort of solution. They tend to stay at the entrance of the nest, not letting any hornets in, but at the same time they become scared to go out because essentially they can see this insect waiting to pounce on them. The outcome of that is actually hives can literally starve to death. And when they do go out, because they're so concerned about these hornets hovering around, the experience, the research has shown that time on flowers gathering nectar and pollen is much reduced, and in essence, their colonies don't thrive. Incidentally, in Jersey, when Valentine and I were there, we did actually see a wild bee nest living in the apex of a church, a gable end, and they were flying into a nest in the roof of the church through an air vent. And surprisingly, I was watching an Asian hornet for 20 minutes hovering outside that air brick, and the bees flew in at top speed. I don't know how they stopped when they got inside, but the hornet really took 10 minutes to catch one because it was moving from a standing start. It was hovering. They were going in at full pelt. Now that's a learned response, and in time you may well find some bees will actually learn those sorts of responses than others. But in the meantime, this could actually have a very serious impact on agriculture and apiculture, of course, in Northern Ireland. Next slide. Now, it's certainly UK-wise, we know that, in fact, for the last several years, there have been Asian hornets appearing in the south coast. They will mainly, presumably, come in on ferries and lorries and containers. A few Asian hornets have appeared as far north as North Yorkshire. I think there might have been one in Scotland. There certainly have been some in Wales. They are hitchhiking in on lorries and cars and whatever. And in England, certainly last year, they actually had, I think, 160 nests destroyed. They can't guarantee they've got them all. Next year, any nests or any queens which survive from those nests will start again, and they'll get another flock or another flow of hornets from France. So essentially, in fact, move to the next slide. Yeah, so I've really actually mentioned about the cost to farmers and others from hornets. In essence, in fact, the impact is threefold. It's economic in terms of actually just how it impacts on agriculture and horticulture. It's certainly health-wise, because certainly people do get badly stung and in some cases killed by hornets. I think there were about 5 or 6 deaths last year from them in France, including, I think, a British tourist who stumbled across a nest in the undergrowth and was badly stung. But also, I think, the impact again is also actually on and more generally, and actually health and safety issues. For example, I know in France and Spain, grape pickers have been stung because essentially they're a bit like wasps. They need carbohydrates as well as protein. They don't just eat pollinators. They will also actually at various times find grapes or plums or cherries, whatever, as a good source of carbohydrates. And if you're picking those, and you pick one up where there's an Asian hornet nearby, it can have a very bad effect. Moving on to the next slide, and I'm very nearly finished, but I think actually this session will be useful for actually the question and answers rather than me speaking all the time. But taking on lessons for Ireland, well, we again, myself and Valentine were speaking to the chap who coordinates the whole invasive species and the Asian hornet down south, John Kelly. We did at one stage, one of our group meetings, ask him, well, what would you do if they arrived tomorrow? And I think it's fair to say that the expectation was it was going to arrive sometime, but none too soon. And about a month or 6 weeks later, lo and behold, Asian hornet found in Cork. That nest took several weeks to find and to deal with, by which time a second nest was found in Cove, just not far away from Cork City. That nest again also was destroyed, but in fact what it showed was, in fact, you can't rest on the fact we're a long way away from where the hornets are. They're coming from Europe. We have regular flows of traffic in from Europe and ferries and container ships, and it just takes one mated queen to come over and become established, and you have a problem. And then, of course, in Northern Ireland, we had one recently in October in Dundonald, just outside Belfast. And in that case, actually, the Northern Ireland Environmental Agency, and I would actually sort of pause just to say, that since we've been writing to government for the last 2 years as the UPKA, and certainly in the last year, in fact, we've had very positive relationships both with DERA and also, and particularly with the Northern Ireland Environmental Agency, that has responsibilities for invasive species. So partially, possibly because of our contact, but also probably because having seen the Asian hornets in Cork, it was a bit of a wake-up call generally. In fairness, when the Dundonald nest Asian hornet was spotted, and again by a member of the public who had seen it on television about them, the NIEA acted very, very quickly. They had volunteers and others going out. Valentine and I both spoke to the chap who leads that, and we offered to help, as both of us obviously had experience of dealing with Asian hornets. In the event, actually, they identified the nest within literally about 2 or 3 days of setting up their traps. And in fairness, the nest was not in a difficult place to find when you looked in the right direction. But at the same time, in fact, they acted very, very quickly and, in fact, destroyed the nest less than a week from the point of the first contact. So, fair play to government in that one. They had all the gear ready to go and they were able to respond quickly. In addition, actually, they kept the Ulster UBKA, both myself and Valentine, informed as we went along, and we were out visiting the site literally the day or so after the nest was discovered, and we had some conversations about how we go forward. So I think in Ireland, what that was a bit of a wake-up call. It reminds us just that, though we are far away from France and other countries, they won't fly in, but they could be carried in. And it's an insect that if it gets established, serious problem. So moving on to the next slide, which is where we go from here. Well, to be honest, I think probably most of our campaigning is with government, because essentially government must actually take this as a serious threat. And certainly we are talking to the department about that. But of course, they tend to deflect us to the Northern Ireland Environmental Agency, which we actually have a very good contact with. And we are talking to them about having some regional public awareness campaigning. We're also talking to them about actually working with the colleagues in the Republic of Ireland to make sure that we have a all-Ireland approach. But it doesn't matter how well we manage Asian hornets in Derry or Belfast or Newry or Strabane. If in fact the other side of the border is not being managed well, they will come to us. We can see if they can get to Northern Ireland from France, it's not going to be difficult for them to get to Northern Ireland from Dundalk or Galway or Cork. So in fact, it's important that we have an all-Ireland response. And in fairness, I think the governments are talking, and there is an all-Ireland group in government which are meant to be dealing with this. Next slide. And this is more or less my final slide. To say what needs to be done, what can you do as a council? And I think there are several things you can do. First of all, raising local public awareness. Whereas beekeepers, Valentine and I suspect Tony all probably carry the app on our phones, which reminds us both what it looks like and B, how to instantly contact the NIEAs or the app to say what we've seen, send them a photograph and initiate a response. So beekeepers are aware of that. But the reality is during the summer, there's plenty of food sources. The Asian hornets won't necessarily go straight to hives. It's likely or more likely to be found in gardens or in parks or in cemeteries. So in fact, raising public awareness is important because in most cases, it's the public, not beekeepers, to see the thing first. And they see it as a strange insect and they wonder what it is. If you've got public awareness, they will actually know to actually tell someone. So that's important. Secondly, actually, you have staff. Your staffs work in parks, they work in cemeteries, as Valentine was noting. It could even be in the bin lorries because you're recycling nowadays. And when they're looking for actually, when the Asian hornet's looking for protein, meat or things, other proteins which have been thrown out, or indeed actually vegetables and fruits, they could have well attracted them. So having your own staff knowing this, perhaps having your bin lorries with a picture of an Asian hornet on the side, there are things like that which can just actually help. And then certainly if Asian hornets were discovered, say in this area or nearby, again, in Belfast, the NIEA does call for volunteers amongst their staff in the first instance, and they got some from there and actually from AFBI, and we'd have volunteered to help if they needed it. If you did have a serious outbreak, having the council actually looking for some of their own staff who work perhaps in the gardens or parks or whatever to actually volunteer to be part of the track and trace, that would be an important contribution you can make. So, and again, of course, I think also keeping in touch with your local beekeepers association, because beekeepers are particularly worried because this is actually it's a threat both to bees, but also to us as beekeepers. We're dealing with the bees that are very regularly. And if we did find these hornets coming, we all know what it's like to be stung by a bee. It's not very pleasant, but by and large, 5 minutes later, you're okay. You're stung by an Asian hornet, it's a different matter. You can end up in hospital. So in fact, it is a serious threat. Moving on to the last slide. There's just a nice picture of an Asian hornet. They are actually lovely insects. You know, if it wasn't for the fact they're so dangerous to bees and to pollinators, they would be a very interesting thing to study. But in the case of the Asian hornet, it is a real and a real threat to agriculture, apiculture, and horticulture in Northern Ireland. And I think it's important that message is put out, not to panic people. You know, we don't want back reactions. We also, I know the beekeeping community itself is a bit of overreaction. Like some people are saying, let's crowdfund lots of traps. Lots of traps will kill lots of pollinators. We're trying not to, we support the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. We actually want to promote pollinators. Putting out a lot of traps, which you don't actually monitor on a daily basis, is the worst possible thing we can do. And if we do have Asian hornets, it's also the worst thing we can do, because the experience in Jersey was you want to put a few monitoring stations out, and you train the Asian hornets to go to the monitoring station for food and back to their nests. And once they've done that several times, you can track which direction they've gone. You can time them, and you get a fairly good approximation of where the nest is. If you've got dozens and dozens of actually of lures all around the place, they would go from one place to the next. It makes life more difficult, and it'll slow down the process and give the Asian hornets a better chance of actually becoming established. So I think I've said enough. John, I don't know if you want to add anything to what I've said.
No, I think Brian's covered everything really well. I think it's really important to be talking.
Sorry, if you just use the wee mic so the people online can hear you. Sorry, Brian. It's okay. It's on. Yeah. I think Brian's covered that really, really well. We need to be really clear that we're talking about monitoring stations, which is what was used in Dundonald, not traps. The idea was, as Brian said towards the end, that they were monitored and followed back to the nest. And this was a member of the public that found this initial insect, not a beekeeper. So it's really important. Public awareness. The cork nest was found by a member of the public as well in a beer garden, and the hornet was actually trying to drink some of the beer. So they took a photograph of it, uploaded it, and that started everything in Cork. Unfortunately, they weren't ready to deal with those nests, and the NIEA learned from that lesson. And as soon as the Asian hornet, a single Asian hornet, was seen, they immediately went into setting up monitoring traps, not traps, but monitoring stations. So we need to be very clear that that will work much better than putting out random traps that will just trap even queen wasps or any of our native insects or pollinators. So the app, as Brian says, is really important, and public awareness of how to use that and what the Asian hornet might look like. They don't mind getting false identification like queen wasps or hoverflies. They'd rather those came in so that we can get the Asian hornet. It's going to come in. The one in Dundonald had 3 sources that it could have come in from. It was very close to a garden centre that imports plants, and they are all over the Netherlands, and a lot of our plants come from Netherlands. There's a massive building going on in the same close vicinity, and it could have come in lorry loads of timber. And also there's a park which is for parking mobile homes and caravans. So it could have hitchhiked on any of those from France. So we can't say where it came from. So it could, and it may well come in from any of the ports and any of the airports. And we're really putting that on the government as saying, you need to let your customs people know that it can come in from anywhere. But gardeners, staff from the council doing garden work can keep an eye out for it as long as they know what they're looking for. And the app has been the real bonus for us. And we want the government to be telling us what is their strategy, because there is a contingency strategy on their website, which is about 20 years old, and they are updating it, and they've promised us at our conference, which is this weekend on the 13th and 14th, they're announcing what that contingency plan will be. But every festival, every outdoor event could have some sort of public awareness going on. We hope to be in Balmoral, and we'll certainly be raising awareness about the Asian hornet there. The farming community, it's really important for them, because a lot of the people in France were grape pickers that got stung really badly. So anybody working in the apple fields or anywhere, it can really affect them. But we want the public with us, we want the councils with us, and we want the government with us as well. Thank you.
I just add one thing. That's the Asian Hornet app, which I have on my phone. And
What's it called?
it's Asian Hornet Watch. So getting your council staff working in those areas, even just to download the app, which both gives you a picture of the thing and actually a way to send a photograph very quickly. Even that would actually be very, very helpful.
Okay, thank you very much to the three of you for that really detailed and insightful presentation. And it was remiss of me at the start, I'm reliably informed from Connor that today is the patron saint of beekeepers, who is an Irish saint, Saint Gobnet, which is appropriate given that we are here talking about the matter that you're here to talk to us about. So reliably informed, I'll take that as read, Connor, that it's true and accurate. But I am going to open it up now to members, and depending on questions or comments, we'll maybe take a couple at a time. But if we want to go to Councillor Murphy first, Lannery Pat.
Thanks, Brian, Tony, and Valentine for the presentation. A couple of questions, and I'll give you the two or three, and then you can answer them. Are they pollinators? That's my first question. Second one is probably around the monitoring stations. Does a hornet have to appear before there's a monitoring station put in place? And then my third question would be around, you alluded to the effect in Jersey that the hornets have had. Is there has it had a tangible effect on agriculture, for instance, in Jersey, and around pollination and different things? Thank you.
There's three questions there, so if we want to
fair to say, they are an apex predator, and as such, they clearly will. I'm not sure they wouldn't ever go onto a flower, but they are an apex predator. So actually, they get all their protein from insects, and then the carbohydrates they get mainly from fruits. So they may well get some, but at the same time, it's not their prime way of feeding. And you're not going to replace pollinators with Asian hornets. Sorry.
Okay.
Monitoring stations.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Monitoring stations. It's really difficult if you're going to put traps up all over the place. If you trap a single hornet, it does get stressed and it won't go back to its nest. So even if you did release it, which is illegal because it's an invasive species, it will not go back to its nest because it's so stressed. So you're never going to find the nest. And for us to actually, it's going to be difficult stopping them coming in because of what I mentioned with lorries, ports, all sorts of containers coming in. And we've seen how quickly they even have gone to America, and they've done the analysis, and the analysis of the DNA of the Asian hornets found in America, they came from Asia. They didn't come from Europe. So they are moving at a rapid rate because of globalization of transport. It's really difficult to put up what we might have. And the monitoring stations need to be fairly close to the nest. So we need to spot the hornet first of all. And what we like to say is snap it, don't trap it, because the minute you trap it, that Asian hornet is not going to come back to your garden and it's not going to go back to its nest. Okay, they don't recruit the same way as bees do that are pollinators, and they're native pollinators. And the problem is it does not just predate on honeybees, although a lot of honeybees are destroyed, and France has lost 50 million less in its income through honey because of the Asian hornet, and that's just in one industry alone. Pollination is also on the crops. They haven't been able to identify how much that's been affected as well. But if you put a monitoring station where you can actually see where the hornet's going backwards and forwards, you'll very quickly get that nest earlier on. So that's really important. But putting you wouldn't put monitoring stations everywhere because you've got to have somebody to look at them. Now AI may have help with that, but that's in the areas where they've already got a problem where we're trying to keep it down. It's an invasive species. I actually cannot find the video. I did have it of an Asian hornet pulling a butterfly apart. And what they do is they don't want any of the head, they don't want the wings, the thorax, which is where the muscle is, which is where all the protein is. They'll take it apart where they catch it and then take it back to the nest because they're feeding the larvae in it. Now, believe it or not, they actually do cultivate the Asian hornet in China because it is protein that's coming from the larvae, which is massive. Don't think I want to be eating them. Kidding. Hope that answers your question.
Content, Councillor Murphy. Alderman Hussey.
My first thought was the apple farmers in Armagh. I thought it was often right. You've highlighted, I want to look first of all at the danger to humans. And you've said there about a single sting put you into hospital or whatever. Do they attack defensively or offensively? And is there the possibility, do they swarm? So that you could end up covered and whatever. The other one is you've talked about the government strategy there, and I suppose this is really for ourselves as to how we would deal as a council with the scenario. And I suppose we're dependent then on the government strategy. And at the same time, I never like to take responsibility away from government and let them abrogate them to local councils. But there would be a situation where I imagine you would hope, you would like that a district council would respond. So I suppose in that, to ourselves, would your organisation be in a position to provide training to council staff if a council requested training with regard to identification, with regard to tracking, and indeed with regard to eradication of nests, etc.? Thank you.
They will defend their nests, and if you go close to the nest, that's when you're going to be in trouble. And that's where they've been finding where the nests are. People have actually been stung to death. I'm going to tell you, I'm allergic to bee stings, so I won't be going anywhere near those nests because their venom is 10 times more powerful. However, that's where they are the most defensive, but they will follow you up to 30 meters. So if somebody's getting stung at that nest, you go in to help them, more hornets will come out, and they will come out in real numbers. So that's answering the first question. Yeah.
Yeah, on the government. And the government strategy, I have some experience of this, but I was a senior civil servant for many years before I retired. And at the end of the day, in fact, it's about how we've been doing our best to raise the priority in government for this, because government's dealing with lots of different things at the same time. It's very easy to think, well, bees, let's land hornets, it's a problem for another day, wait till they appear. That's not the way to do it. So we are pressing, as an organisation, we're pressing governments north and with our colleagues in south too, to actually be prepared, to actually produce proper public awareness systems. But we're conscious that councils, often that you've got much closer links to the ground. A small amount of investment in just a little bit of training or a bit of or a localised public awareness thing, or even the mayor speaking about this in a public event, though that sort of thing can actually get through, whereas government's quite often quite a long way from local communities. So I wouldn't say let's wait for government, because in fact, whereas government may well have more resources, it's often sometimes slow to react, whereas I think local councils are sometimes much more flexible and much more able to respond quickly and effectively. On the training though, clearly in UBKA, beekeepers aren't necessarily the best place to do the training. I think in Northern Environmental Agency, should this become more of a problem, I suspect they will say they're doing some training, they'll be doing some training. And beekeepers, a number of us went to Jersey last year, a number of us will be going again this year, and we've got very good links with Jersey and indeed with the south of England. So we are actually we will have more people who could perhaps help you if in fact this thing arose. But we're not really a training organisation, as you'd appreciate. Probably that's one that you would push back to the Environmental Agency, and I suspect they would say they will have their staff trained initially. And I know at least one of them had gone to Jersey as well. So they actually have got some experience. But if it was becoming a serious problem, if we were finding regular appearances of Asian hornets in Northern Ireland, I suspect that would be one of the elements. And I think local council should be part of the solution. But certainly it shouldn't just be abrogated to local authorities.
Will you permit a supplementary? And it's to our own officers. You'll be delighted to hear. Have we the ability, or do we, if somebody reports a wasp nest, do council eradicate that, or is it up to the individual?
It depends on the land that it's on. If we would deal with invasive species and issues relating to wasps, etc., on our own land, but we wouldn't deal with them on other people's land at the minute.
Okay, Councillor Donnelly or Lena?
Chair, and thanks for the presentation. I think the bees here, the last thing that the bees need here is a beer drinking hornet, given all the troubles that they're currently having. You know, it's well known that the native population has been under pressure, and and that's down to a number of things regarding loss of habitat, disease, pesticides, climate change. But having read this, it is alarming, and there seems to be a number of increasing invasive species. Only last week I found a New Zealand flatworm, which and I'm been told that there's plenty of them about. But I think that I am concerned that the resources may not be there to deal with this, because I think it was last year that we didn't have, the 6 counties didn't have, there was a lack of inspectorate. I think that had been going on for maybe a year before that. I'm not sure whether that has been remedied, but maybe our visitors could tell me that. But I do think that we need to be getting our act together. We need to be, getting the awareness training, and we need to be investing in, if there is, I'm aware of a number of sort of hives that appeared on people's property, and it was effectively up to them people to get rid of them. And some of these people are just terrified, and they just want it gone. And if that means sort of getting rid of them, then that's what they will be, that's what they'd be pushing for. Whereas I think there needs to be a joint up sort of approach, that if this situation happens, given that the bees are under that much pressure, that we need to be trying at least saving them and relocating them rather than letting them demise. Thank you.
Well, there's good news and bad news. The good news is actually certainly the times I've been involved in beekeeping for several years now. In fact, there's nearly twice as many beekeepers in Northern Ireland now as there was when I first started off. So actually, and there's a lot of young people becoming involved. So I think a lot of people recognise that bees are an important part of our environment, and particularly the native Irish black bee, which we're very, very supportive of. So on that plus side, actually, there are more people working to actually support and make sure our bees thrive. On the negative side, clearly the whole resourcing issue, governments press for cash. On the bee inspectorate, Valentine and I have been writing to government for the last few years. At the moment, we have allegedly 3 bee inspectors. One of them, at least one of them's trained, possibly two. But in essence, in fact, we haven't got enough. And indeed, if you look at the contingency, the old contingency plan for Asian hornets, which is being rewritten, and certainly there's a commitment from the NIEA that we will actually we will see a late draft and have a chance to actually help shape it. But you look at the old strategy, and it says if there's Asian hornets, the bee inspector will be taking the lead and taking it forward. The bee inspectorate, as it stands, is a skeleton service. They are, in fairness to government, they're trying to increase the numbers, but within government, there are lots of calls for where they recruit further new civil servants. The bee inspector are not at the top of the list of people to get first call on those people. So in essence, what they found last year, they were trying to recruit and they got none. Now, I think we are hoping to hear very shortly that they were a bit more successful in this round, but any new bee inspectors come in, they're not coming in as experienced beekeepers. They're coming in as people who have been recruited into the civil service and said, right, your job is to become a plant and bee inspector. They aren't going to, they aren't going to necessarily be able to analyze diseases and other things in beehives from day one. It may well take several months or a year before they're up to any sort of speed. And even there, they'll probably have a lot less experience than many beekeepers. So that's an area we're working with government. In fairness, government are trying to resolve the problem, and we are supportive of that. And indeed, we've invited them to our conference at the weekend, and we've certainly invited them to any of the training sessions we do for beekeepers if they get new staff. So we're trying to work in partnership with them, but essentially we believe government needs to afford this greater priority so it acts a bit more quickly in this area.
Yeah, and just further to that as well, in response to Derek's and Gary's points about what can we do now within the council body. I think it's reasonably anticipated that this year that more bees and hornets will be found, will be discovered, maybe singularly or in nests or whatever. But I think we need to prepare as much as we can, and there are probably a couple of obvious things that we could explore between the council, yourselves, and the dairy beekeepers, doing some basic stuff about what the Asian hornet is, what it looks like, and what you do in the event of finding one or seeing one. That stuff could happen. That would be sort of very basic and easy to achieve in the short to mid term. So if you want to engage us in that, that would be quite easy to do, just as a practical step.
If I can just add to that, I think a coordinated approach, which is very open and transparent between government, councils and interested parties and stakeholders like beekeepers or like the orchards and the apple growers, has got to be important that we all understand and we're coming from one voice and we're also working with the public. I understand the concern about having ad hoc hives that people are just looking rid of. And that's something that we in the UBK we're not keen for people to be uncomfortable with honeybees being in their locations. You will find that in the future, you'll probably find that you have to register as a beekeeper and where your apiaries are in the future so that they can't be a nuisance. And that's really important. And we're for that because we want to know where people are and how we can help the public. We want the public on our side. We want the councils on our side. We want the government on our side, and we need to work together. That's really important. Okay.
Yeah, I might just add, there's also another thing you can do is actually work with your local beekeeping association just to promote the value of bees, because they really are quite essential actually in terms of, quite apart from producing real honey, apart from sadly some of the stuff you get in supermarkets nowadays, but also the fact, they are so important for our agriculture and horticulture. So even just trying to present a bit more positive picture about the importance of beekeeping and bees, I think itself is helpful. But that's part of a broader public awareness raising issue I think you need to be looking at.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sure that the comments, particularly that Tony put forward, we're happy to take them on board. I have Councillor McGinley in the chamber, Councillor Riley online, and then I think that's us, Alderman Kerrigan as well. So I'll take Councillor McGinley first.
Thanks, Brian, Tony and Valentine. I find this fascinating. And I said to Tony just before you started that I was really looking forward to the presentation, and it didn't disappoint as such. Just a wee quick question. I know there was reference there to the all-island approach to tackling this, and much of it has been focused on DERA and NIEA. Has there been as much of an uptick coming from the department in the 26th and the Oireachtas for climate, energy and environment? Have they got a similar strategy? Are they working with the NAEA and DERA on a joint up strategy, because I do think it's important that this is tackled on an all-island basis, because as has been alluded to, you know, the bees, hornets don't stop at the border. And just a second suggestion perhaps, in terms of what Tony has suggested there about a basic approach and awareness. I don't know, Karen, if we can talk to even our council's media team and that what to do and the raising awareness and starting there and rolling that out through council departments, so that staff, that people that live in the area are aware of what to do. So I do think that there's a wee step that we could take there that's an action coming from this presentation today. But I just want to thank you on behalf of our team. It was fascinating. Thank you.
On the All Ireland.
Really
prospect.
quickly, we've been to Dublin and we've met the agencies there. Unfortunately, they're pushing it from one department to another. And we're very lucky here in that we have one department, and the NIA has been very, very positive and very approachable, which is fantastic. And I think they're learning. I think so. We want one answer to the whole thing, because we are an island. I mean, hornets don't know any borders, and neither do bees, and neither should we. But I think, honestly, we need everybody on board as government to work together, and I think it's important that we do that.
Thank you. Bring Karen in as well.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Members, we're more than happy to take on board the comments that members have made today. As you do know, Council is supportive of the All-Island Pollinator Plan, and indeed we have a biodiversity officer within our green infrastructure team, and certainly we can ensure that they engage with the local Beekeepers Association, and we can look to roll out some awareness training amongst our wider grounds maintenance and frontline staff who'd be out on in the area. I'm sure a lot of them would be very interested and very willing to help. So absolutely, we can take that on board. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks, Councillor McGinley. Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, for bringing me in, and thanks to the deputation. It is, as others have said, a very interesting matter, but also a very important one, given the impact that our pollinators have in food production, in keeping our economy going, and it is crucial that we take all the steps that we can to protect the native bees from the Asian hornet. Chair, I'm lucky enough to be on holiday this week from my work because of school midterm, and I'm down in the country, and was lucky enough to see a red squirrel only yesterday, and we all know around how difficult it is protecting the red squirrels from the grey squirrels, and I think that this is similar in the sense that we do need to protect our native bees from the invasive species of the Asian hornet. So happy with the positive responses thus far from officers in terms of helping to put pressure on and raising voices, etc., in alerting the public. And with that in mind, I suppose one of the best ways of raising awareness among the public is also through social media channels. So I would be hopeful that officers can bear that in mind as well, in terms of using that platform that we have as council to try and alert people to what Asian hornets look like and what to do if they see one, who to contact, and not to notice it and not report it. I think that's crucial, that people act with their eyes and their ears, and if they do see something that is unusual with the bee population, then they alert people, so that action can be taken swiftly to make sure that we stamp out the Asian hornet in our environment here. So, Chair, thank you very much on behalf of the SDLP. Thanks to the delegation, and we're certainly happy to give it full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. I'm going to take Alderman Kerrigan as well before passing back to yourselves to sum up, if that's okay. Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me in. And again, I think most of the items have already been raised by other members that previously spoke. Apologies, I didn't get the full presentation. I was online as I was travelling in, but you just don't have full reception there around Clary when you're coming in. But So I got the majority of it, and it's good to see that we have a sort of consensus on this. You know, you've raised the issue with us, and we are all effectively singing off the same hymn sheet here. And even that positive that Emma has raised there in regards to pushing it on social media, whatever can be done that we can push that out, that as well as council staff, as well as members of the public can try and identify these. And as you say, you've touched on, it's not the case of us taking the picture and identifying where they are and trying to go on from that. So no, just content enough, Chair, with the presentation, and again, very supportive of whatever we can do as a council in regards to deal with the issue that's raised. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Kerrigan. And just to sum up, if you have anything else to add to either Councillor Riley or Alderman Kerrigan before we finish, Tony.
Nothing really to add, but I just want to record our thanks to yourself, Paul, and Karen, and the rest of the committee for hearing us today. It has become a very serious issue environmentally in many of our European countries, and it probably will become a serious issue for us as well over the next number of years. So the Derry-Strabane area is quite well known for getting ahead of the posse and working together to present a united front. And I would advocate on the same thing in this regard. It's coming down the road. We may as well get used to it and be first off the blocks in terms of that sort of basic training throughout the council staff. As Karen says, that people who work in the cemeteries, parks, walkways, woodlands, all that, places where these hornets are probably going to manifest, and then cascading that wider throughout the community as well. So thank you very much for hearing us, and we'll be all ears in terms of how we can work together in the near future.
Perfect. Thank you very much, folks. And thanks again for coming on. We look forward to hearing from you again in the future, hopefully. Members, with your indulgence, I'm going to take a couple of minutes just of a comfort break while our visitors leave before we move on, if that's okay. Thank you. Hey, members, thank you very much for that. And we will move on through our agenda, and we are going to do open for decision then. So chairperson's business. I don't have any, and nobody contacted the chair beforehand either. So I will move on to item number 7, which is matters arising from the open minutes of the ENR committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 14th of January. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. ER 14/26, the Greenway. It's just a general question about greenways going forward. Obviously, we have litter picking teams. Has that been factored in to our greenways going forward, that the teams will cover the greenways or not?
Through you, Chair, members, the revenue implications of all of our capital projects are considered at the time whenever the project's being developed, and officers will put forward then, as part of the rates estimates process, suggestions for additional maintenance and management, because obviously there's cleansing and litter picking is one aspect of it, but obviously repair and all of those other aspects, damage and those issues are all taken into consideration. So we do set aside a certain percentage of additional resource when we develop not only greenways but all of our capital projects. So we hope then that captures all of the implications of the projects as we're moving forward.
Thank you, Chair, and that allows me to move on to the second part of my question. We do, of course, have litter picking schedules for roads outside of the A5 and outside of the city, etc., for some roads. When is that schedule due to run again? Because the reason I'm asking, I don't know about any other members, but I would suspect our rural members have noticed the build-up of rubbish on many of the roads about there. I had cause to be up the Donamanagh country today, and the Berryhill Road, our own roads around Castledarg are in need of the litter pick. So when is the schedule due to hit on that? Thank you.
Chair, I'll check that out. There is a schedule in place for cleaning all roads, and we get around it as quick as we can. Obviously, given the time of year, weather conditions, it is a bit more problematic, but I will certainly check that out. But I can give you an assurance that all roads are included in it, and all roads will be attended to as soon as is possible and practical.
I appreciate that reply, Chair. And given the state of some of them, I suspect they've come close to their scheduled time.
Thank you, Alderman Hussain and Karen and Connor. I didn't think I would get an opportunity as early to remind Alderman Hussain and others of the importance of a budget across council. But there we go on the very first agenda item, Alderman Hussain. Thank you very much. That's us on matters arising, and moving on then to item number 8, which is the street naming and property number and request for development names, and Connor's taking us through that.
Thanks, Chair. This again members consent to name a development at Ballygordon Road, Eglinton. Council has received an application with respect to 3 proposed names for the following development. It's Farmley Drive, Farmley Grove and Farmley Court. And Table C3 sets out the key issues in terms of the names and their relationship with the development and the proposal. And the recommendation in front of members today is to approve the adoption of the names Farmley Drive, Farmley Grove and Farmley Court for the housing development at Ballygordon Road, Eglinton. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Connor. Anybody out there? Emma proposed. Alderman Hussey seconded. Thank you. Moving on then is item number 9 is the street naming and property number and request for installation of dual language signage, and that's Connor again.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And it's to inform members of the outcome of a recent application to provide dual language signage at Burnside Manor, Craigan Heights, Ernest Street, Eskaheen View, Old Mill Court and Pine Trees. Applications have been received by Council in respect of these developments for dual signage in Irish, and as I set out as per Table 2.2. In accordance with Council's dual language and street naming policy, Council has undertaken a plebiscite in each of the streets with the following results, and they're set out in terms of the table. In accordance with Irish City as demanded to Council policy on street naming and property number, the plebiscites of Burnside Manor, Ernest Street, Eskaheen View, Old Mill Court and Pine Trees achieved the minimum consent threshold of 15% required for dual language signage to be considered by council. In accordance with the policy on street name and property number, the plebiscite of Craig Heights did not achieve the minimum consent threshold of 15% required for dual language signage to be considered by council. And the recommendation on that, given the outcome of the plebiscite, is members are asked to approve the erection of dual language street signage at Burnside Manor, Ernest Street, Eskaheen View, Old Mill Court and Pine Trees Dairy. Thanks, Chair.
Margaret Connor, and I have Councillor Donnelly online.
Chair, when I read this report this morning, I was very surprised regarding Craig Heights, and I made a number of phone calls. Been there, I'm very familiar with, and out of the 7 different families that I phoned, Chair, only one family received told me that they received the correspondence from council. Now I don't know what the story is, or could it be down to post, or what way did that work? And if they didn't receive, which 6 out of 7 families told me this morning, then what would the procedures be to rectify this, or so that people are given the opportunity to contribute? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. I'm going to ring Karen in.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, this that's the first information that we've received in relation to that, so we will look into that issue and come back to members as soon as we can. Thanks.
Councillor McGinley first then, please.
Gormagad, Chair. Similar to Councillor Donnelly, I was surprised and I'm aware of ongoing works that are happening in Craig Heights, and even if someone had received it, it may not be the first thing that comes to their mind is to reply, given the major work that's happening with the Housing Executive. NI Water have been on site. There's various factors that could have contributed to that. That being said, the survey has been carried out. I do appreciate that it can be looked at, and on that basis I'm content to propose or second the recommendation that is outlined in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. And just on Councillor Donnelly's point, I mean, that is an issue that myself, Councillor Kerrigan, have pointed out in the past in regard to previous ones where we get claims from people they didn't know that the survey was taking place. So there may be something that has to be done there. I'm not sure, but I respect Councillor McGinley's point. I'm not seconding it, by the way. I wouldn't. But I accept that she is accepting the result of this and not seeking to change it. Thank you.
I have always said it's a democratic process.
Absolutely, Councillor McGinley. Councillor Donnelly online, were you happy to pose the report that Councillor McGinley has seconded or not?
No, Chair, I think there's something, if as I said, if I talk to half a dozen families who haven't got it, then, there seems to be something wrong. Thank you. But I'm happy with, the answer is that you're going to come back with further information, and I'm content with that. Thank you.
Members, we're just seeking some clarity in relation to whether we want to defer this until we get let officers go away and explore those people who maybe didn't receive, which I don't think anybody had an issue with. The only issue I've raised with officers is if we go ahead and approve this report today, does that then stifle any future engagement with residents of Craig Heights who are telling Councillor Donnelly that they haven't received the letter, or telling Councillor McGinley that they maybe had other things to do? So I just want clarity from members.
In recommending or proposing the recommendation that's in the report, which states, given the outcome of the plebiscite, members are asked to approve the erection of the dual language street signage for the listed residences. It doesn't mention Craig Heights. I would still be content for them to go ahead. I don't want to stop that happening, but I do think we do need to have a conversation about what's happening to Craig Heights. So go ahead. In my opinion, that's what I was proposing when I proposed the recommendation is the streets that are listed there to go ahead, but we do need to still look at what's happened to Craig Heights.
Okay, then a seconder then for that proposal. Councillor Murphy and then Councillor Hussey for a brief comment.
Yeah. I appreciate where Councillor McGinn is coming from and that, you know, you want to look at that scenario. Does that mean to say that retrospectively, a precedent has been set where we can request that previous determinations where similar situations we believe existed can be re-examined?
Through you, Chair. Members, what I'm suggesting is that we speak to the officers who are responsible for undertaking this process to find out what actually happened. Were there any issues? Was this carried out in the normal way? Where did we follow the normal process? And that given members, I think that we will have to update members on that, and I would presume members would then be happy with the process. So today is the first that I've heard that there was any suggested issue. I need to be able to go and speak to our officers who undertook the process to ensure that the process was undertaken in the normal manner and that there weren't any issues. And I would imagine that we would update members accordingly in relation to that.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Farrell online.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy to support the deferral of sorts. I think it's really, really positive that we have these applications, and most of them scored 100% in terms of responders, you know, so that there is widespread acceptance of the application. And in regard to Craig Heights, every single person who responded in favour of dual language signage. So that is indicative of the support in that area. But happy to allow the officers to do further investigations because we want to get this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farrell. And lastly then, Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll just be consistent. None of them exceeded a third, never mind the 50%. So I say you can just record it as an against, but I say if they're over 50%, I would have supported it. But at this stage, I'll just be consistent with my previous position. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alderman.
Chair, on the same basis, I'm not voting against, I'm abstaining.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, thank you, members. Moving on to item number 10 then is the applications to erect memorials, Castledare, Ardstraw and Ernie cemeteries, and Connor will take this.
Thanks, Chair. This is to advise and seek members' recommendations with regard to a number of requests received to erect a number of memorial benches and plaques within the Castledare, Ernie and Ardstraw cemeteries. Members will be aware that Council operates and maintains a number of municipal cemeteries across the city and district in which families are able to erect headstones and memorials in memory of their loved ones. In consideration of this, Council previously endorsed a cemetery management manual setting out the operational requirements that included details with regard to the erection of headstones and memorials within those cemeteries to better regulate and manage this process. Most recently, the cemetery section received an application from the Ulster Defence Regiment Memorial Association seeking permission to erect 3 number memorial benches to commemorate members lost during the Troubles, several of whom are buried within the cemeteries listed. The cemetery team have reviewed the application and are content that the proposed memorials comply with the requirements as set out in the cemetery management manual and that space is available along the boundary walls within the cemeteries to accommodate the installations. In addition, Council has also received an application from the Royal British Legion to erect a memorial plaque at Castledare Cemetery indicating that there are Commonwealth graves located within this cemetery. The cemetery team have reviewed this application and are content that the proposed memorial complies with the requirements as set out in the cemetery management manual and that space can be identified within the cemetery to accommodate this installation. Council have also received a request from a family with a loved one interred in the cemetery to install a memorial bench adjacent to the family grave. Council officers met with the family representative on site and advised of safety concerns regarding the proposed location, given it was immediately adjacent to a vehicle turning circle with the potential for users and pedestrians to come into contact with moving vehicles. Whilst considering the above request, Council received correspondence from a neighbouring grave owner advising that whilst they had absolutely no objection to the bench, they felt that the proposed location was inappropriate and that it should be installed elsewhere within the cemetery. Having considered the request and subsequent correspondence, officers recommend that this request be facilitated at a location within the cemetery that does not impact on the safety of users and does not impact on the families of neighbouring graves within an area along the perimeter wall deemed the most appropriate. Officers also noted that a bench has been installed on the turning circle presenting the risk to users and will engage directly with the family who've installed this bench to seek agreement to move on this to an alternative, safer location. The proposal that is screened in for quality impact assessment on the screening questionnaire has been attached for members' consideration. There are no other quality or rural climate change or data protection issues associated with this item. There's no cost, again, associated with the installations and the request as attached. And members are asked to support the installation of memorial benches and plaques proposed that are in line with the requirements of the Cemetery Management Manual. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Conor. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you, Chair. And to begin with, can I offer sincere thanks to Conor and the team for the work that they have undertaken in regard to this particular item. A couple of us know the difficulties that have existed going forward with regard to it, in particular one, but the other ones, the team have met with applicants, looked at sites, and it's been tremendously appreciated by those who are making application for these. And I have great pleasure in proposing a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Hussey. Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in. Again, I concur with comments from Alderman Hussey there. It has been it's always a difficult process, and anything to do with cemeteries and anything to do with graves. And I do thank the officers very much for all their engagement in regards to that, and even in 3.71 in regards to the current bench that's on the turning circle. You know, there's issues raised that. There's just one other wee, very slight one. There is a bench that existing against the perimeter wall against Hazel Grove. And now I haven't looked at that specifically, but someone did inform me that bench may be in poor condition. And I do believe there's a plaque on that's been dedicated in memory of something. Can that just maybe be taken a wee look at when you're wrapping the rest of it up? You know, if it could just be looked at, as I say, I can't recall now the name of the individual that's on it, but someone had claimed to me that it was, you'd be feared to sit on it because it would be in that poor condition. I just don't know if that's genuine or how accurate that is or not. But when you're doing the rest of the work, and I understand the majority of this is in relation to Castlereagh Cemetery, but again, it is sure to learn as well. So more than content with the work that officers have engaged in and understand the sensitivities of it, and content to second it. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, we're happy to pick up that. Members will note item number 17 on memorial inspection within cemeteries. We'll pick it up as part of that process.
Thank you, Alderman Kerrigan and Conor. Councillor McGinley.
For Mega Chair, and thank you, Conor, for the report. And as Alderman Kerrigan had alluded to there, any issues that are raised in relation to cemeteries can be incredibly sensitive. That being said, it is my view that I won't be standing in the way of anybody commemorating or remembering their dead, but I also cannot vote in favour of a memorial to the Ulster Defence Regiment as a Republican. So in that vein, I will abstain, and we will be abstaining on this recommendation just on that basis. But it's fully respectful that people have the right to remember their dead. Thank you.
Councillor Donnelly.
Chair. Chair, I won't be abstaining in this. I will be voting against it. And I think this report, how there's no difficulties with this is in my opinion, beyond belief. This is a notorious armed group that is responsible for many, many murders right throughout the 6th county. And only in February 2024, 2 widows settled a compensation claim regarding the murder of their husband, the widow of Jim Lockery, the widow of John Toland, for an undisclosed, they settled a case for an undisclosed 6-figure sum. And this happened after the 2 families commenced civil proceedings following a publication of reports by the HET, the Historical Inquiries Team, Chair, and there by no means a progressive organisation. And it was after they confirmed that the UDA gang that shot both of these men included members
Point of order, Chair.
of the UDR.
Point of order, Alderman Hussey. And before you start your point of order, Alderman Hussey, can we remember to be sensitive on all contributions that are being made in the chamber? But I will take point of order.
It's really accuracy. Councillor Donnelly referred there to the UDA.
Yeah. And
Councillor
you need
Donnelly,
to-
continue on if you want to take into consideration the point of order.
Chair, the HET confirmed that the UDA gang that murdered both of these men included members of the UDR and a former member of the RUC. You know, in the area that this is going in, we've had the death of Michael McHugh in January 1977 was carried out by a loyalist gang that included UDR members. There was one unconvicted of possessing a weapon that was used in this murder and other murders. We've had high levels of infiltration by loyalist paramilitary groups. The UDR has been used as a source of weapons, with hundreds of weapons, rifles and submachine guns past the loyalist murder gangs. We've had the Glenanne gang, which included several UDR members responsible for dozens of deaths. We've had reports, we've had from the HET, which has shown that the British government were aware of this infiltration. There's been cover-ups, and in the 1991 attack in Kappa, the HET report emerged to confirm that there was UDR members involved in that. So on that basis, and if people want to commemorate their dead, they're quite entitled to, but this council should not have a corporate position of putting memorials were basically a murder gang that worked hand in hand with loyalist paramilitaries. That should not be the corporate position of this council.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Boyle has his hand up, so I'm going to take that as an indication to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair, for allowing me in. I think from an SDLP perspective, we obviously do appreciate the sensitivities in relation to cemeteries in general, and of course then the ability for people to be able to remember and commemorate the loss of their particular loved ones. And we genuinely do believe that we should try to approach this with some degree of magnanimity and compassion. Undoubtedly, and I think we've already heard it, undoubtedly there will be contested versions of many things that have gone before. However, we do believe that all should be free to commemorate and to remember and to grieve freely without interference. However, again, we're reluctant to fully endorse the idea of the UDR commemorations. However, we do not want to at the same time interfere with that, and so to that extent we too will be abstaining in this. We don't believe it appropriate to interfere with a grieving process or people commemorating and remembering.
Thank you, Councillor Boyle. Emma, Councillor McGinley, for a very brief point before we move to the vote.
And I will be very brief. The purpose of the abstention, there is also requests that are from specific, like families, individual families within this report. And I think it's important that we're being sensitive to not every request that's in here is from a grouping, an organisation, or anything. There's requests in here from families. And on that basis, we will be abstaining, for absolute clarity.
Councillor McGinley. Karen, will you take us through a vote, please?
Thank you. So this is the vote is whether or not we are voting for the officer recommendation for item number 10. Alderman Derek Hussey.
For.
Alderman Keith Kerrigan.
For, Karen.
Alderman Julie Middleton. Alderman Middleton online. Did I hear her? I don't think she's online. Okay. Councillor Boggs. Abstain. Councillor Boyle.
Abstain.
Councillor Donnelly. Yeah.
Against.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Duffy.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Farrell.
Abstain.
Councillor Fleming.
Abstain.
Councillor McGinley.
Abstain.
Councillor McGowan is Councillor Murphy,
Abstain.
Councillor Norris,
Abstain.
and Councillor Riley.
Abstain, Karen.
Okay, so Chair, that's 2 for, 1 against, and 9 abstentions. So that passes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair, or thank you, Karen. Sorry, thanks, members. Moving on then to item number 11 is the Dira Bovine TB Regionalisation Project, and Karen will take us through that report.
Thank you, Chair. And members, the purpose of this report is to inform members of the Dira Bovine Tuberculosis Regionalisation Project, including land surveys, and seek members' consideration of the request to access council land from Dira to undertake badger surveys and carry out testing, vaccination and removal as per the project methodology. Members, the department are delivering a 5-year shared island funded programme working on a cross-border basis to focus efforts to reduce bovine TB. And Derry, Strabane and Donegal have been selected as a pilot area to undertake the proof of concept, and council officers received a presentation from DERA in relation to the project and the approach to reducing TB, which is outlined in your report. DERA are seeking permission to access council-owned lands to undertake badger set surveys and carry out testing, vaccination and removal as per the project methodology. And DERA have agreed to give a presentation to Rights of Nature Group in February. Members, the proposal has been screened out for a quality impact assessment, and the screening questionnaire is attached, and members are requested to note the contents of Appendix 1, which is the DERA project presentation, and to consider permitting access to council land for the purpose of undertaking the surveys, carrying out testing, vaccination and removal in line with the regionalisation project. Happy to take any comments that members have. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. Alderman Kerrigan.
Thank you, Chair, and very briefly. This, in regards to this application or this put forward here from DERA, this is only north of Strabane. This is only in that area north of Strabane to the city, and solely what we're asked for is effectively then just getting permission to use council grounds to see what there is. I'm just wondering the level of council grounds, and maybe the council officers could relay the level of badger activity that's taking place in council grounds, because I would imagine it's limited, if at all, particularly within the city boundary, but maybe I'm wrong in that regard. As I say, this is DERA's, if this is there, they've picked, it's what they've picked. I know of other areas that are a lot more in difficulty with TB and the effects of TB. You know, particularly in our own area and up into Cash and into Kilskerry country, where, but I know that's outside of our boundary. But there's major issues with tuberculosis. But the issue as well, I know it's mentioned in badgers here, but there's significant issues as well in regards to the TB from deers, and you know we would have quite a number of that in our area there outside Newton Stewart as well. But I know if this is the area that is taking place and that's the request that it's solely to do with that, I'm content with that. But I just be mindful as to the level of ground that we have, because the majority of our grounds is like football pitches and that. You know, I'm trying to think. There's not necessarily large swathes of ground that council owns. You know, I've no real issue if that's what they want to do, but I don't necessarily see the massive benefit in it. But it is somebody has signed it off. I say content of proposal, but if those couple of points could be clarified, just thank you, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Members, this is a request we've received from DERA. They want to access our lands in the identified area. And again, you know, we can relay those points back to DERA if members want, but we're considering what's put before us today.
Thank you. Alderman Kerrigan, are you happy to propose? Yeah, I would share some of the concerns of Alderman Kerrigan. There are areas through the City and District that are much more prone to those issues than maybe what is selected. So would welcome if officers could follow up with DERA in relation to that. Have we a seconder for that report, Councillor McGinley? Thank you. Members, the other items are open for information, but Karen is going to come in on item 13 first, please.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Members, it's just to remind you that the department is coming to present to the next committee in relation to flooding. And members having engaged with the departmental officials earlier today when the Minister came to launch the Living with Water action plan. They have requested if members have any questions that they will want to be asked in the officials, they would be more than happy to take the questions ahead of the committee so that they can be prepared for the questions, and rather than having to come back to members. So if members want to consider that, and if there are any particular questions that they think they might benefit from an answer on the day of the committee next month, then if you let me know and I'll relay that to the departmental officials. Thank you.
That's helpful, Karen. Thank you very much. And just as Deputy Chair, can I welcome the announcement by the Infrastructure Minister today in relation to the Dairy Living with Water programme. I think it was a very useful session when Department presented to us, albeit virtually, but it did show that with increased investment and sustainable urban drainage and all the other things the Department is doing, Living with Water programmes do make a difference and have a part to play in relation to addressing the wastewater capacity issues, and also just as it says on the tin, Living with Water, because incidences of rain and flooding are becoming more and more prevalent. So just to welcome that the Minister was on our council area today to launch that plan. Alderman Kerrigan.
Very briefly, declaration of interest in regards to the Drainage Council for Northern Ireland.
That's noted. Thank you very much. That's proposed. Sorry, it wasn't. It was just for information. Members, items 12 to 17. Then outside of that. Sorry, apologies, Councillor Riley. All right.
Yeah, you're okay. Thanks. I stuck my name in the chat box. Just on this item quickly to thank Karen for the update and look forward to hearing from the departmental officials next month, and to likewise also welcome the Minister's visit to the city and council district earlier today. I know that she was there in relation to investing in the water, but she also took an opportunity to visit the Caw roundabout in the Ballyowen site, so hopefully there'll be some progress there as well in relation to unlocking new social homes at that location, as well as dealing with the long-running saga of the difficulties that all northwest motorists will encounter at some stage around the Foyle Bridge and the Caw roundabout. So yeah, it was great to see the Minister in the city today. Let's hope that the positive visit is followed up with positive action. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Riley, and apologies for missing you. Moving on then, Alderman Hussey.
Thank you. Agenda item 16, Chair. The environmental vandalism and designated area of natural outstanding beauty, Bonds Lane. I note the background that we've received there, and I note 2.3, the response has been received from the department. And I want to look in depth at that response. The Minister has responded on one aspect of this, namely the area of outstanding natural beauty. The Minister doesn't seem to know, or seems to forget, that the area under concern is also an area of special scientific interest and is also a special area of conservation. And those designations in themselves also bring extra responsibilities. Now, the Minister does not have regulatory responsibility for investigating alleged activities that happen to take place in an area of outstanding natural beauty. Okay, if that's what the department's saying. But there are those other two designations which in themselves add a weight to the concerns that people in that area have. The Minister has confirmed that inspections described above, considering close proximity and connection to the adjacent river fawn and tributaries ASSI. My officers notified the Lochs Agency to ensure they were informed of the situation to support the detection of the migratory salmon. And I was told, I had a meeting this morning with this particular group, and it's my understanding that they know that the Lochs Agency are undertaking investigations with regard to water quality, etc. Can I remind the Minister, and indeed perhaps Council, that there are 4 public bodies that have a responsibility in regard to this devastation that is happening in that particular area of our council. NIEA have a responsibility of enforcing environmental regulations. One of the regulations would be the dumping of materials within an area. This morning I was shown actually a drone photo which clearly identified an area where materials have been dumped. That area has since been covered over. But what the group were able to tell me was, yes, there was somebody there from NIEA. And a guy walked about with his hands in his pockets, looked around and said, there's nothing here to see, and went away again. That's the basics of it. But if he'd spoken to the group beforehand, or if the minister had accepted our invitation to meet with the group, he could have instructed his officials. They could have looked at the evidential photographs, identified that area, and the NIEA could have gone in, looked at that area where those materials have been dumped and covered over. And what is not known is the nature of those materials. It's the understanding it's rubble out of a house, etc. But who's to say there isn't asbestos within that stuff that has been dumped? So that's the NIEA. Department of Agriculture have responsible for environmental protection and sustainable development. There's a heck of a lot in what we learned. Myself and Councillor Montgomery met with this group this morning. For example, soil and gravel removal. In Northern Ireland, the removal of soil and gravel from an area of outstanding natural beauty is subject to strict environmental and planning controls managed by the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs and local planning authorities. The group presented their assessment, which would indicate that an excess of 250,000 tonnes of soil and gravel have been removed from that particular site illegally. Surely that is something that the department and the minister should be concerned about. We're looking here at woodland habitats, ecologically significant areas, Atlantic summer otter, salmon, otter, etc. Conservation status designated as an ASSA. And within the catchment, well, thankfully, it would appear that the Lochs Agency, at least, are beginning to look at investigations, and they are one of the identified agencies, and we're thankful for that. And within that, again, watercourses, it appears from the evidence presented, the investigations of the environmental group at Ponds Lane, there's evidence of watercourse interference, diversion of watercourses, culverting without consent. Written approval is required from DFI Rivers to carry out any works that affect the flow of a watercourse. Failure to get this approval is an offence under the Drainage Act, Northern Ireland, 1973. There's a whole rake of stuff here that I could go through, but I'm not going to delay the committee any longer. I am going to look at our own responsibility. And Council has a responsibility with regard to this as well. Now, the Minister's officials contacted our District Council Planning Enforcement Unit, who confirmed that they have been investigating unauthorised development at this location since 13th of January 2025. That's over a year ago. And they are considering enforcement action. I believe at the last meeting of this committee, it was suggested that enforcement action was going to be forthcoming. I want to know, has there been enforcement action? And what is the result of that enforcement action? What's happened? Because I was on site today and I haven't seen anything. And I'm concerned about this. I'm concerned that here we have a group who have done their investigations. It's clear and evident that there is environmental vandalism on this site, and it would appear that it is being ignored by so many. And for the Minister to finish off by saying, as there were no other concerns identified during visits noted above, I don't believe a meeting is necessary. Well, I've got news for you, Minister. The group and those of us who have met with the group do consider that a meeting is necessary. So get your backside off your seat, get into your ministerial car and come down and meet with elected representatives and the group that has concern and evidence of wrongdoing doing in that area. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair, members, I don't have an up-to-date position as of today in terms of planning enforcement. I have spoken to the head of planning on a number of occasions in relation to this and had received updates. Members, obviously, as we know, we have to be very careful in terms of planning enforcement to ensure that we protect the process of the planning enforcement. I will seek a further update from our planning enforcement team and update members accordingly as soon as possible.
Thank you, Karen. Alderman Hussey.
Thank you for the chance to come back, and I thank Karen for that. I understand Karen's position that she has to be mindful of the process, etc. I'm mindful of the damage being done in this area. That's my concern, and that's the concern of the people that we met with today. So that is the concern. And is there a possibility that we could have an update at council, in a council meeting itself, when this report, when the minutes of this meeting will be brought to council? I think there is an urgency here, and we have to accept that urgency. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Chair, members, more than happy to do that.
Thank you, Karen. Alderman Hussey, just following up, you had said at the end of your comments as well, although in a few choice words about the minister and how he should get here. Are you suggesting that we write back to the minister to reissue that invite? I know that was an ask of the group, so I just want to give you an opportunity. Is that a formal proposal or?
Thank you, Chair. I will make that a proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Not in those words, but
no, we'll draft the letter slightly differently. But that's seconded by Alderman Kerrigan, but I think supported by the rest of us. So thank you very much for that, members. Another opportunity just in relation to open for information. Or are we content to move on? Content to move on. Can I have a proposer and a seconder then to go into confidential? Alderman Kerrigan and Councillor McGinley. Thank you.